Gabe Cabrera, welcome to the Iron Sights Podcast.
Thank you, sir.
Really good to see you again.
Likewise.
Last time I actually connected with you for the first time, same time last year. We are at, and you are kicking off actually a whole week of podcasts here at SHOT Show 2024. This is only my second time. How many times have you been to one of these?
16th. One of my first SHOT shows was the last one in Orlando.
That means nothing to me.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It was that long ago.
Yeah. This is the whole SHOT Show experience is already, and we just got in yesterday. We got in. We're recording this on a Monday. Mm-hmm. And so for those people that maybe don't understand or haven't been in a while or whatever, there's a huge range day to it today. Mm-hmm. Everybody sort of arrives to town today into Las Vegas, Nevada, get checked into their hotel or whatever, and then they're going out to the range, which is about an hour and 15 minutes from here?
Yeah. I mean, it's out there. I know venues are limited. Right. They put on a good event over there. I'll give it to them. I used to know one of the folks that helps put that on, and they bust their ass every year.
Well, there's going to be a lot of people out there. I am not going to that. We're hanging out this morning, and then I've got some stuff to do this afternoon, but then we get right into the show tomorrow, starts tomorrow officially, the floor stuff, and then we have a couple of days of this. We will be in this room several times. So I don't know the order of how we'll be doing this, but I appreciate you being the first one to come on and help me with all the sound checks and the lighting checks and all that stuff and being patient.
I'm just excited. Honestly, we had a very cool, just open conversation last year at the booth. Mm-hmm. And after that, and Chris, who's been on the show, and Aaron and everybody else, I'm like, man, I would just love to have a conversation with Scott at this show,
Well, we made it happen. And it wasn't
and it was last minute too, so you made room. Thank you.
No, it worked out well. Some of the history is we saw one another last summer and weren't able to get together. I really wanted to try to make something happen together last summer. I was back on the East Coast and you were at a show or at an event there, and we just couldn't make it happen. So here we are. Going back to that original conversation, that is where we got introduced. Mm-hmm. A lot of good guys standing at the booth there. I believe at the time, Sam Houston was there. John Dufresne was there.
I thought you said good guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm confused.
I have Sam coming in later this week.
I had a stroke after we met during the summer.
That's a true story. This is a true story.
I'm trying to get caught up on things.
Yeah. How are you, by the way?
It's been a year.
Yeah. How's it feeling? How you going?
It was an interesting road to recovery. I give Aaron a ton of shit because I still work the event. Mm-hmm. You saw it. Right. So it was pretty crazy because as it is, I mean, we have a lot of back end conversations. You're a friend of the company. Mm-hmm. You know how hard, especially Aaron, works. So last year was especially tough. I would say from August to when I had the stroke, that's when I had to go on a mandatory, just like pause for the cause. Mm-hmm. I myself was doing an average of like 2 trips a month. Mm-hmm. And Aaron lived on the road. Still does.
Still does.
I mean, if you're about it, right? Ride or die. And, it's easy to see we believe in the brand and I guess the dream and the man behind the dream. So I had the medical issue in Georgia. Don and Sam were pretty much my QRF on the spot.
Good dudes.
It was, one of those things I just lights out behind the wheel.
Yeah, it's scary.
And thank God, I think I was on the 285 going through Alpharetta, and it was bumper to bumper traffic.
Bumper to bumper, yeah.
And I just coasted into this van that was in front of me, and I came to a stop. I woke up after I blew out this guy's back window.
Right.
And I remember looking around. I'm like, what the fuck?
Right.
I couldn't remember anything. The first 2 things, which, still kind of hits me right here. The first thing I remembered was I have 2 boys. Mm-hmm. And then I have a Toyota Tundra, so they kind of have that little LCD display with the saved contacts. And I'm like, oh, I have a wife. And then I just saw the name, like, that looks familiar, and I just mashed it. And I'm like, call everybody. I don't know what the hell happened. And it was funny because she was trying to find out where I am. I'm just taking random pictures of stuff around me. and I happened to catch one of the sign and the mile marker. And then, she got with Aaron. Aaron immediately, obviously, was going to hop on a plane. Probably saying, man, I can't trust Gabe to do one fucking thing. But what a cocksucker. No, but then Don and Sam showed up. Here's the behind the scenes story on that no one really knows. You caught a little bit of that.
So I do know a bit about that, and only because we were the come in and get the truck part.
Yes.
And there was a lot going on that day.
You were part of that group too. Yeah. That's true. Thank you.
Yeah, I was. We
so you're the reason I'm around. Well, that may piss off a lot of people.
Well, it's part of the story is, and just going back to like the initial things, like what happens, like people are going, of course you got to call your wife, of course you got to call your kids, but there's I think the piece of it is while it wasn't a like a high speed collision, there you were pretty out of it.
I was out. I don't black out. I've flown off of motorcycles. Obviously, in my younger days, drink till you black out. That would never happen, so I would just keep on drinking. It's like, this is horrible. Right. I just don't. I don't. And I don't know what it is. I just don't. And I blacked out, and that's the part that freaked me out more than anything else. So that and when my wife heard that, she was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But so now the meaty morsel of the story. So crash happens. The guy in front of me gets out of his vehicle. It was him and his little girl. They were going to go to a Braves game. And man, it broke my heart because I was starting to I was out of it. You guys saw me.
I saw you an hour after.
I was torn up.
Not even an hour, maybe 45 minutes after.
And I was just and the guy's like, man, are you all right? I'm like, huh? And we start talking, and him and his little girl were more worried about me. And that's a huge thing. Because as much as I travel and as many different folks that you come across in this great country, sometimes you come across some real jerks, and that revived my hope for humanity. Just someone so without need, being a good human. And then we started talking. He's like, what happened? He could tell that I was out of it. And we started connecting notes. His brother had just died that same year. Stroke,
same way.
Behind the wheel. Lost control. I think on I-75, drove off the side of the highway, died.
Wow.
So I saw it in his eyes, like, this guy's reliving that shit. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so much going on right now. So he calls 911. Keep forgetting the name of the agency that showed up. But let me tell you, it wasn't a really good one. The guy that shows up puts Barney Fife to shame. And, I'm like trying to articulate any bit of info to this guy, and he's just being a real jerk. Come to find out later on, he had been let go from certain agencies.
I heard the same story on the same day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick was the one that confirmed it.
Yep.
He's like, oh, that dickhead, because he saw the card.
Yeah.
So the guy starts grilling me. He sees that I can barely blink. Even Don was like, bro, this guy is not bouncing back from this, because my face was like shifted. I looked like a Picasso painting.
Right.
Just not worth nearly as much. And they call EMS, and it's Fulton County EMS that shows up. It's not an ambulance service.
Yeah, you were right on the county line too, by the way.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it was right before the hospital that they should have taken me to. So they start running all these tests, everything else. Obviously, I'm out of it. My blood pressure was a little high. They're like, oh, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. You want to grab a fucking coffee? Like, I'd like to go to the hospital. And then the lesser meth head, because they all had scabbies on them and everything else. Like,
yeah, you're talking about basically, the ambulance crew. Yeah.
The county. And for the folks that are tuning in, I live in Miami-Dade County. Probably the most overspoiled civil service.
Yeah, there's firefighters, EMS,
top
cops,
of the line, everything.
Sheriffs, everywhere. Yeah,
top of the line, everything.
Yeah.
And I have family within fire rescue, so I know how militant they are about everything. Like, they're Johnny on the spot, right? They've saved my oldest son, more than a few times. So I'm used to that. And then I'm looking at these folks. I'm like, oh my God, the EMS has eyes. And the lady's like, well, I could take you to the ER, but most people that we take there, these places are so full They get tired. They go somewhere else.
This is where it gets really wild, man.
Yeah. And she's like, here, open up your phone. I'm like, Give her my phone. Here's the urgent care. If you feel bad later, go here. She thought I was going to drive away.
Unbelievable.
From this. And then let's call him Fife, comes back. He's like, because mind you,
we're stopped up on the freeway.
It's rush hour traffic. I have a truck full of guns, NFA stuff, cans, everything else. I've never played the race card, but let's be honest, I'm a brown guy with a truck full of guns. It's not going to go the way that I would like it to go. You know, and I'm like, oh God, I got to get Don over here. So I'm calling Don. You guys are rushing to get over there. And then she's like, because the guy's like, oh, I'm going to tow you. And you know, when they tow, they do the inventory and they start pulling stuff out. And, you know, I have a background in LE, and I'll tell you, most cops don't know gun laws.
I'd say like the greater majority of them don't.
And you know, there's a bigger problem there, bigger conversation for another day. But by the time they figure it out, you know, it's going to be a bad experience.
But by the way, for all those cops out there, I don't know how they could keep up. So that, to be clear, like I don't know how they could keep up with all those laws.
It's a bigger problem.
That's neither here nor there.
It's a bigger problem over the guy on the road.
Yeah, totally.
FTOs have failed a huge generation of law enforcement officers. There's, you know, we obviously work hand in hand with LE, and we see a lot of these issues. But I knew for a fact this guy didn't know shit about gun laws. So she's like, "Hey, look, you know. Why don't I just get you over to this side and you can wait for your buddies?" I'm like, all right. I get in the passenger seat. She starts driving. There's an on-the-job Fulton County EMS individual driving my privately owned vehicle. It's just been in a traffic accident. Full of guns, right? I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of policies she's violated. And then she's like, well, you know what? The exit's right here. Let me get you off on the exit. So they, you know, you find a rendezvous point that's a lot easier. I'm like, okay. At this light, at that exit, if you were to make a left, is Northside Hospital, where I ended up after you guys showed up. She chose to make a right, where the fucking Starbucks is. Because that makes sense. Right? I'm in flip-flops and shorts because I was driving all day from Homestead.
Right.
You know? And I get out for the first time to see the damage. I'm like, fuck me, I fucked this thing up like pretty bad. And then that's when Nick comes in, lights and sirens.
We were right behind him.
Yeah, and because he's a SWAT officer for Fulton, sergeant over there, and he had just finished doing his thing. And he's like, hey, everything okay? I'm like, yeah. He's like, where's EMS? I'm like,
they just dropped me off here.
They just fucking left. He's like, bullshit. He's like, that was that chick that jumped into the fire truck on the road. I'm like, she fucking left? Because when I got out, she said, oh, by the way, I need you to sign some paperwork saying that you denied service. I'm like, I didn't deny service? You said it was going to... I turned around, she's gone. She went through the bushes. She pulled a Homer Simpson. And the truck picked her up and took off.
It really is an
unbelievable... And Nick was like, oh, they forged the shit out of your signature. Like...
Really is an unbelievable story. When we showed up and you were just getting out of the front seat of your truck, I mean, I looked at your eyes and I was like, why is he here right now? You should be in the hospital.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it worked out. It was a little scary for everybody. I think we were all trying to put the pieces together, obviously, including yourself. And it took a while for it all to kind of come together to what had actually transpired. But going back to the good people part, I mean, how fortunate. I mean, all the right things kind of came into place in that it was slow, barely moving on the freeway. Thank God.
And there was a bunch of near misses because it had been raining all throughout Florida that day.
So fortunate.
Yeah, and now I'm like, oof, I'm in the clear. And then.
Yeah. And so, again, going back, like that was our opportunity to kind of sit down, and it obviously didn't happen. That wouldn't have been a great conversation. But that doesn't take away from the original conversation we had and kind of talking about a lot of things. I was kind of trying to catch up on you because I'd known a little bit about the company, but I didn't know kind of all the back end. And that's really when I started to meet all the folks. So let's get caught up just real quick on where you are with things. Like, let's talk about business and kind of who you are there and what you're doing. And then let's back up and give people a little bit of background. And that includes me on kind of how you got here. And then I have several questions for you that I think you're going to lend some serious insight on. So let's talk about work right now. What are you doing?
So I'm the president for Cobalt Kinetics, rifle manufacturer out of St. George, Utah. More on the higher end AR side, right? been there since Aaron bought the company in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I met him through mere happenstance. My buddy, Chris, who's known as Real Dirty Harry on social, got a contract to do content for him. And Don, Sam, Duffy, myself, and Chris had been in Henderson, Nevada already for like a week with Paul Chiappa that used to work at Battle Arms. And I was at Roscoe.
Okay.
Doing a bunch of content. He's like, hey, come up with me. Need you to give me a hand. I'll fly you back. And I had just driven from Florida all the way to Vegas with Don and Sam. I had my limit with Sam. So I'm like, I'll take a free ride.
I think everybody that knows Sam can appreciate that one.
No, and I just met Aaron and we hit it off, and I saw something in him I hadn't seen in years, and there was a genuine love for what his next couple of years was going to be. And he bought this company sight unseen, really wanting to do something different. And me being in this game long enough, I'm like, oh man, there's going to be so many people that are just going to take advantage of this guy. And so we just hit it off as friends. And I just came there as a sound guy pretty much to help out Chris. And I'm like, okay, so what's your business plan? What's this? What's that? He's like, well, I don't really. I'm like, why are we even doing content? So I sat him down. And as tired as I was, I did like an emergency 6-month battle plan. So we knew what content to collect. Marketing is only there to support sales. You don't have a sales plan or direction. You're just spinning your tires. And then after that, we started talking. And Roscoe Manufacturing is a barrel company. I started that company with the owner in 2017. And I'm pretty loyal, right? Roscoe will always be my baby. So, you know, Aaron and I were talking for a while. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And then finally he gave me a great opportunity, and I had the conversation with Mike, the owner of Roscoe, and we're still homies, you know. And it was the beautiful, perfect case scenario. And then after that, it's been nothing but the grind.
Yeah, how's it all going now?
Man, it's been interesting. But the thing about Aaron, which I appreciated, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hitch my wagon to this. There's a lot of vacationing entrepreneurs in this industry. So
they're playing business.
Right. Or they're tired of what they do somewhere else and they think, oh, it's just going to be a fun hangout. Like, no, you better roll your freaking sleeves up. To me, the firearms industry sometimes is the bus station from Total Recall.
Okay. That's a good analogy, I guess.
Yeah, and you know I'm not wrong. If you ever go to the Circle Bar, you know what I'm talking about. But and the reason I say that, aside from the shenanigans and everything else, is it is kind of a passerby industry. Empires rise, they fall. People come in for the good times. They see there's a lot of work. Out. So the idea here was slow burn. We want to be a legacy brand. You know, at the beginning during the rebrand, I had to do all that. There was a ton of ad spend that had to go into this very strategic type of buildup. I've had a unique opportunity in the industry to become the rebrander and the fixer for brands. It just ended up happening that way since I started at Taurus and then started my own marketing company, and it just ended up being that way. So we did the rebrand, got the name out there. We had to dispel a ton of bad press from the old version of the company, right?
Yep.
And the way that they kind of fizzled out and left the scene. And the rest of it was proof, right? Because talk is cheap. And that is why we've lived on the road for the last... Because Aaron will tell you, he walked into some dealers and almost freaking... You remember that video with Bush where the Iraqi guy threw the sandal at him?
Yeah, we had a bit of a conversation on the show because we had Aaron on the same time last year, but I've had a few with him since. Just, basically having to untangle that very sticky web of bad business practice that now you're associated with or married to. And it takes a long time. People have there was some, let's just say the taste that was left on a lot of people's mouths was
and
really
rightfully
bitter.
so.
Was really bitter. And that's the same thing Aaron said,
Because even before I got here, I used to watch the company from a distance, and it was just a very eclectic group of people. You know,
just going back to that, just in the industry, there's with that, we talk about it a lot, but it's more than just ego, but there's so much ego in it. And when I find about, Aaron and kind of how you guys have handled yourselves, specifically with Aaron and you in this process, it's about going to those people and go, I know you probably hate my guts, and you don't even know me. Tell me how we can make it better. Tell me all the things that went wrong. let me at least have an opportunity to try and make that right. And in some cases that's worked out. And I know some lasting friendships as a result have some really strong friendships and relationships have come out of that. But on the flip side, I know it does. You can't always undo all that, unfortunately. But the point of that is like literally going in as the CEO, the president, and going, we messed up. Like we're now Cobalt, so we messed up. Let's fix it. And again, you guys have. As a result, that means going out on the road and rebuilding or building these relationships and getting your product in people's hands and whatnot. And it's interesting to see where it's for me, kind of watching it from the outside. You said slow burn. To me, it looks like it's moving at breakneck speed in a lot of ways. And I don't mean that like there's a new SKU every week or anything like that. It's just the word is getting out, and you're seeing more people talking about it and being familiarized with the brand in a much different way. While it still says Cobalt, and it's Cobalt Kinetics now, it is entirely different than it was. So it is a rebrand, but
that means a lot. By the way,
it's almost it's brand new. It's almost it's completely different. To do it in the time frame that it's been done, as we're talking late 2020, 2021 is when this started.
I actually started with him officially October 21.
Yeah, so. Yeah, we're late in 21, and we've only just begun 24. That is not. It's not a long time. So anyway, that's been impressive to me, which is one of the reasons I was so intrigued by you guys right from the get-go. And the other part of it was, and I've shared this before, and it goes back. We were just talking before we sat down, and our buddy Chris Curris was hounding you on the Instagram post that I had put up yesterday or whatever.
He doesn't want to fight this.
But I
don't care what he thinks.
He comes in tonight. I'll pay to see that.
Sure.
But the point of that is the way he talked about Aaron and you guys at the time when I met with him for the first time, me knowing Chris, and that message just kind of kept coming up through other conversation, and that was what was intriguing. Like everybody's talking about the people, and I played around with the product, but everybody was talking about the people. I'm like, I got to know who these dudes are. So I think that's a little. You can do that one of two ways. It's either you can build a really poor reputation, you can build a really good one. And for me, being new to the space, I was only interested in talking to the guys that I had spent time or invested in to understand who they were and what I believed and what I didn't believe, or is this dude full of shit or not? I wanted to know who they knew, and that's why we're sitting here today. So going back to that conversation at the booth, and then the whole thing you just said about how we're even sitting here today, it speaks to, I think, the relationships that you guys have together, and then the trust that you have in what it is that you're doing, in the direction you're moving it. But it seems fast, and that goes back. I guess that's where this thing started.
It's one of those things. It's not until you take a moment, if you even have that luxury, to take a look back, you're like, holy shit, that happened kind of quick. But when you're in it, like, the days are never ending.
Yeah, I can get that. And you, I mean, you alluded to this at the beginning. You've been around this game for a long time. I mean, long time. I mean, there's going to be people that have been around longer.
Well,
but you mentioned Taurus, you mentioned Roscoe. We're talking Cobalt now. There's a lot of history here that I want to get into. But go ahead.
Sure. I just want to touch on the long time thing. I like to think of myself as a survivor, because you see it. People come and go all the time.
Yeah, you mentioned that too.
And it's connected to the reputation. So my two-pronged approach on that, you said bad and good. Bad is the most expensive way of doing it. Good is just the hardest way of doing it. But if you trade in the currency that I trade in, which is my name, and that's why I can feed my kids, that's an investment I make every day of the fucking week. Every day of the week.
Yeah, you got to go all in on you, which means that's what it's got to be.
Yeah,
I know there's a lot of, and I've actually in the past even talked about this. Like, oftentimes I find there's too many handshake deals, because going back to the bad versus good, what's expensive, at some point you have to. This is a business, and that handshake deal, and you just riding on your reputation. that can be a dangerous play because you're expecting that the guy on the other end that you're shaking hands with is meeting you at the same place. And invariably, there are going to be difficulties or challenges along the way. That is doing business. And if certain things haven't been laid out, right and left parameters, if you want to call it that way, that's when disagreements happen. Mm-hmm. And then that's when people compromise, and maybe say something, what true or untrue, or to make themselves look better, or to get out of a bad situation or a bad decision they made. Whether they remember what they said or not doesn't matter. That's when those reputations end up getting destroyed and hurt. And I think going back to what you were saying about the coming and going of people into this industry, I think it starts on a lot of bro conversations, and it doesn't necessarily turn very professional fast enough. Mm-hmm. But going back to the history that you've had, like you've seen growth in some very big companies, right? And been involved in that, then started your own, right? And then, or was part of the start of Roscoe, and now walking into a complete rebrand. So you're kind of hitting all of the angles, which is an interesting take. Not that you've been to different places, because this business is super incestuous, is what I've found. Like, you could be working here one day and you're working here. Like, what label or what logo are you wearing this time? I have seen that. Just in my short time.
I have a theory on that.
But so that's why I wanted to sit. One of the reasons I want to sit down with you. You have interesting insight to kind of the business end of this. But let me hear the theory. What's the theory? And you just mean about like the brand hopping or the incestuousness?
Yeah. So this industry is huge, but it's also very small. But sometimes information doesn't travel at the speed that it should to insulate prospective companies hiring new people. If you catch my drift. Mm-hmm. Someone would have burned a company down to the ground and not cared about what ashes they left behind. Mm-hmm. And then you think, oh, that guy's done. Oh, shit, he's the director of marketing over here. Well, how did
this happen?
But what you do see a lot, and this is actually a message to small business owners and people looking to get started in this industry. Vet your people, okay? The younger you are, the more vulnerable you are to be taken advantage of by predatory marketers, right? Because they know you don't know anybody. And they'll walk you around and introduce you to a couple people like, oh, this guy's connected. No, this is the hustle. You suck the hose dry till it's a husk, and then you move on to something else. Now, the interesting thing about reputations, I'm not anything crazy or out of this world, but I am loyal to a fault where I've been screwed over. Even recently, we've talked about things like that. But when people start mentioning my name, I get phone calls. And that to me means more than anything in the world, because I've made an impression on that individual who took the time to vet the information that someone gave them. You're like, hey, this can't be true, right? I'm like, no. Okay, I got you. And that's really cool. That shows me that in these almost 16 years, I've stayed true to my promise, which is don't screw anybody over. But, as far as the background, I was in the military for a while, got out. The economy took a shit. Mm-hmm. I had a really good job lined up with a company called Subsea 7.
Okay.
Which is the one, they were owned by, I think, Halliburton. And they're the ones that brought you all the images from the Mississippi Canyon 252 oil spill.
Okay.
So because I worked, in and around robotics and stuff like that when they were having the job fairs on the base.
Okay.
They were going to start me off at that time as an apprentice, like $90 a year. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I'll take it.
Yeah, coming out of the military is a pretty good gig.
Yeah, and the only reason why I said, because I wanted to be a lifer, but then my wife now was my high school sweetheart back then.
Okay.
And we're like, let's try and make this work. She was going to Florida State at the time. She's an archaeologist, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, way smarter than me.
Yeah.
I'm extremely proud of her.
I know that one. I know how that works.
And
thank God for those.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I moved to Tallahassee after that job fell through because they started laying people off. I started contracting for a bit, which sucked. Worked for DynCorp. One of my old supervisors, his wife, May, used to work HR at DynCorp out of the South Carolina division. And she really took care of me because it was a long list of people that wanted that job. That's when they were paying good rates. Got out, did LE for a little bit. They started having a hiring freeze. I'm like, man, I can't catch a break. So I moved back down to South Florida and started working different gun stores. And because I had kind of already been in the industry a little bit when I was in, I kind of had a different mindset on guns. And truth be told, I got into the industry because of my gunsmithing abilities and custom gun stuff. I used to build like $2,000 1911s, just a hustle. And then I got hired at Taurus, and it was a great experience for me. That's when Mark Kresser was the CEO there, and he was a very big, invest in your people type guy. And I started off as a gunsmith, and through continuous internal hires, I became trainer and technical writer for the company.
Okay.
And I was just a schlub.
Very interesting.
But I busted my ass. It was a 4-hour interview. My old supervisor, Kimberly Intagliata, felt so bad for me. She just let me keep on doing it. I'd pop up from the computer, I'm going to go back down because I had to write a training manual from scratch. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So I took my time, became trainer and technical writer, and then another internal hire. I was the promotion that I applied for, and I competed against outside peers and recruiting agencies and stuff like that.
Okay.
I was the company's one of the company's first product managers.
So this is what I mean about the interesting experience, because when companies are starting, new companies, or and there's so many products, right? There's guns, then there's all the other things, right? That go into those. They can be started literally in somebody's garage, right? You need a CNC machine, you need whatever it is, whether it's soft goods to accessories or whatever, furniture. You can literally start it in your garage, and usually starts as one dude who was working another job, right? Or had some other thing going on, saw a need, gave it a go, put his weekends, late nights or evenings, into it. And the next thing you know, he's got a little bit of a product, and that turns into, I'm going to need some help with this. And maybe they hire a buddy, or maybe they get taken advantage of and get into something else. My point of this, of saying this is all the things that you're talking about, all the lessons that you learn. I've been through, my career path was very much similar in that way, like bouncing around a little bit and then finding a place that gave me a lot of upward mobility that I had to earn, but I was earning it on somebody else's dime, and I could make mistakes along the way that, weren't going to cost me my house, or whatever. Yeah. And I had somebody looking over my shoulder to some extent. So there was some mentorship there. There was also some don't do that. You get that slap on the wrist, you go, why not? Because I was always the rule breaker and the rule bender. And it was like, well, because here's how this trickles down when we're talking big boy companies, or, when you're wearing your big boy pants, or when there's big boy money kind of involved in this stuff. And so you had to become a deeper thinker, and from an operational perspective, think about like, okay, here's this great idea, whatever, we're doing this thing, the sales process is there, we have a POS that works, it's all smooth, we've taken all the friction out. One of the biggest things I ever got was, you alluded to this right from the beginning when we were talking about what Cobalt was the person that taught me, now that you have the perfect plan and everything's figured out and you're rolling, right? You're making money. What's the thing that's going to come by and hit you in the side of the head when you're least expecting it or looking at it? And that could be reputation, some weak underbelly piece of whatever it is that you put together. It's competition. It's some guy who has some dirt or some other product or whatever it is. There's all those things. And you don't want to learn that while you're building your company. And so going back to how incestuous and people bouncing around, what I get when I talk to a lot of folks is like they haven't been in it long enough to really anywhere. When I mean like they haven't been anywhere long enough to experience those things, to be able to take that wisdom with them to the next thing. They're constantly, so the learning curve seems to be, while it's very, very sharp, the wisdom curve it's just flat. Like in a lot of cases from the business aspect. So anyway, that's kind of my take from the outside looking in. There are people listening to this going, what the fuck is he even talking about?
No, it's pretty accurate. And I've seen what you're talking about. There's some folks that are just resume chasing. Yeah. They're trying to pad their resume.
And revenue or income chasing.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll make lateral moves because they screwed up. So, I mean, you probably took a hit. And the more you relocate, because, now working remotely is a thing. It wasn't like that all the time, right? So you're losing money every time you have to move across the country on a wing and a prayer that...
This job maybe works out,
There are some people that I've met that have been really good at fast-tracking their careers because they did a really good job here for 2 years, and then some opened up over there in a better position, and it's what you want in your career, upward movement.
Sure.
Especially if you're in a place where my options are either kill my boss
right.
or find some way to climb that ladder. No, there's an uninterrupted path that's going to be mutually beneficial for everybody, right? But that's an exception to the rule. Fortunately, I see a lot of just, like you said, resume chasing and company hopping. And that, I think, in a roundabout way, kind of leads me to what we were talking about previously, which is why this industry is unique, but it's also years behind.
Yeah, let's talk about this. I cut you off last night. We were talking for a couple minutes ago. We got to save this conversation for the show because, again, we're here at SHOT Show, right? Massive. I mean, there's so much money, obviously, in the industry, but here at the show, like for vendors, for companies to be here to showcase their products, even for us to be here, right? To get a hotel room, to eat, to get on the road, all the things. I don't have to list them, but there's a lot being put into this, and it seems over the years, people are dropping off and they're doing things much differently, particularly in the last couple of years. I mean, there are some major brands out there that aren't here and haven't been here. For me, like as just a consumer, an end-use guy, that's disappointing to see because that's where we're putting our dollars. And you guys aren't here to meet the customer where the customer is. And those people that are spending the money or let's just say investing on being somewhere to potentially, if you have an opportunity to be in front of your customer in that way as a massive company that, and we don't even have to say their names. They're just not out there on the floor. They don't have any intention of being here on the floor. And I saw this happening a couple of years ago when it kind of started around COVID. Oh, well, we're not coming back. And then, interesting, it's like, that's kind of weird. And then in some of these big companies, you start to see what appears to be like some quality control issues really popping up that are a big fucking problem. They're not even addressing it. And it's really easy not to address it when you're not there to be addressed. Yet they're making a ton of money and they're getting lots of big government contracts and things like that. And look, you do you. It's your business. You run it however you want. But yet you have a lot of smaller companies that are trying to break in and they're doing it in a much, much different way. And they're not trying to have 60% of the market share. They're just trying to have their percentage of the market share and take really good care of it. That's kind of my outside,
the farm to table type of.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm seeing it kind of turn into. What's your take on where we're at and what's happening?
Here we go. So I came here to talk about Steve Harvey, first off. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'll take you through a journey. So one, there's two sides to every story on why certain manufacturers are not here and will not come back to the show. The NSSF, I think, pretty good institution. They've put themselves, at least that's what they tell us, that there are advocates. Let's even call them our union. I don't know. I've never seen them dispute prices on raw material for us. Help us chase down money from vendors.
There it is.
And even though this is a free market and I love capitalism, my parents came from Cuba. No one's going to hate communism more than me. It could be said if you've been around this long enough, sometimes there is a good old boy network in the back end.
100%.
Washing each other's hands. Right?
100%.
And so a lot of companies, especially the ones that have had turnover and that have younger, hungrier minds there, I'm not going to play that game. Especially when it's ran by an actual union-backed show conglomerate, right? I don't even have to say the name. And I've seen booths get shut down, police tape be put around a booth, people escorted out like they're criminals, and they're just law-abiding, hard-working Americans. Just because, you sold a grip at your booth. There's no selling here. So you're going to escort me out like I'm a fucking criminal?
Yeah, it's wild.
Cool. So all in, by the time that a small company looks at their expenditure for the show, probably $100K. Did they even get the POs to justify the cost of admission?
You'll never know.
You don't have the time to know because you're here to showcase your company, get your name out there, broker relationships, open up different sales channels, and hopefully I can make my fucking nut before I go home so I can hit payroll and these other families can eat.
So I'm going to time you out there. So I'm just like from the devil's advocate side, is that a bad thing though? I mean, you had an opportunity. Everybody gets the same opportunity. You know, Gabe, like you can come here and you can do that and you can spend the money.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing? Like, does that mean like the show in and of itself is shitty?
So here's an opportunity for everyone in the industry. Mm-hmm. By now, everybody knows that Wayne LaPierre is no longer with the NRA.
Yep.
And that also sounds the horns of change, right? I see a lot of companies that I'm patriotic. Cool. For profit or for the cause?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sorry to cut you off. The reason why I say that is now's the time to prop up good people that are going to be leadership in this industry for our generation and our kids' generation, if they so choose to want to follow in our footsteps.
You know, so there was somebody that I think it was actually, I'll drop his name. I don't know Lucas, but I would love to have this conversation with him. Lucas Botkin, yeah, T-Rex Arms. He had dropped something with regard to the changing of the guard, going back to LaPierre and him being done, and hoping the new guy comes in, can do a better job. You know, can he do a better job than the last guy? And this is a big deal, right? And it's a huge deal because
what happened there influenced everything here.
100%. So so
we're on the same page
from a business perspective, but also from a constitutional perspective, a legal perspective, where the firearms, where the Second Amendment is, in the United States. Mm-hmm. So, but that said, can it be different? And you alluded to a couple of things, and that is it's good timing. We need new leadership, and the bigger job, I think, is to actually start to influence a cultural change that speaks specifically to what you were just saying there about putting the people in place that want to do this in the long run, don't just want to have their little fiefdoms, right, and wash each other's hands all the time, and which is going to mean it's tough. I mean, that's the hardest thing to do is change that culture. But what it means doing is it means cultivating new relationships, and then nurturing those, because it doesn't happen overnight. But it also means ending relationships. Like, this isn't working out.
And gatekeeping.
That's what that means. So you get rid of some of the old guard that has been holding maybe things back from evolving or advancing, or just kind of staying stagnant, if you will, I guess, is at the end of the day. So that's, again, it's a really big time. But to your point, like bringing in new leadership that wants to explore, like, what is the new versus, how we've been doing this for, whatever, the last 20, 30 years. So on that note, so obviously we have a changing the guard with LaPierre stepping out with the NRA. What was the catalyst for this? Like, because I don't think that's it. I think this has been happening, right? Yeah. And when I look at that, I'm like, yeah, the guy's realizing his time is up. Anyway, he'll always be influential, right? But maybe he's realizing his time is up. And I'm wondering if you can put your finger on, like, when did this kind of start to happen? And like with what's going on with the smaller company like Cobalt and being able to do the things that you're able to do, because if you go back 20 years, that's unheard of.
Oh, no one ever stepped outside the line.
Unheard of.
Yeah, cut your head off.
So what was the catalyst for this?
I think the fight to stay in power became more for LaPierre. His time is worth more, especially as he gets older. And the fight gets more aggressive every year. Keeping people on your side, having to make sure people are lobbying for you, and I'd say about 4 years back is where it really started nipping at his heels. You had guys like Adam Kraut, which is an awesome dude. You should have him on the show one day. Adam was running for NRA board, and they're like, all the FUDs were like, this young guy, 86 that. But yet those are the same FUDs that gave away the slide fire stock. No, that's fine. We can keep our Brownings. Cool, buddy. Well, when you're 6 feet under and I'm still fighting for the rights for me and my kid, I'll remember that. Right? So it started becoming a thing where a lot of newer companies and a lot of maybe even newer NRA members are like, yeah, what of it? Like, who's got our back? And then you started seeing FPC and these other ones pop up that actually have our generations and future generations' best interests at heart.
Yep.
I think,
and have totally different attitude about it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, like, I get it, it's marketing; they got to be a little edgy, but you got to have sizzle on the steak. I get it.
That's where we are.
I get it. Yeah. And that speaks to our audience, right? So play to your audience. But as long as I have a long-term plan, I'm behind these guys. So a lot of people kind of created that exodus from NRA for these smaller ones. And that was the sound.
Me included.
Yeah, there you go.
I bumped out a long time ago. I was like, what am I supporting anymore?
That was the sound of change.
Yeah, what am I supporting? I remember it was actually 2020. I wrote them a check, my membership check or whatever. But 2021, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. For the same reason you just said. I'm like, what's happening here? Like, and again, I'm not mad about it. It was just like, they're not representing my best interest or my interests.
No.
So, and I know mine are similar to others. So I kind of saw it coming.
And ILA has done a bunch of stuff too, but they're almost like two completely different sides.
Entities, yeah.
Yeah, and Chris Cox busted his ass for everybody, right? But then again, they never saw eye to eye from what I hear anyway, So, I mean, there was already dissension within the ranks internally. So, I mean, if the ship is taking on water, you're going to trust the captain to take it to dry land? I mean, and I think it was one of those things where they gave him a nice golden parachute. They're like, hey, love you, Wayne. Right off into the sunset. But going back to it now, we need to be the change we want to see, right? Gandhi thing overused on every Instagram quote out there. But it's accurate. This is a call to arms, so to speak. People in the industry. If you're in a position where you have history, where you've led people, where it's really like right here what you want to see, start being politically, active. Maybe go for NRA board. Maybe something as simple as having town hall, functions and meetings with other manufacturers. We are so quick to tear each other down.
Yeah.
Horrible. And that's why sometimes you see people in cliques, or they can be accused of being in cliques. I almost can't fight that, because if you're not big enough to be insulated, right? Because they have a team of everything.
Yeah, there's safety in numbers, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And power.
Where's your tribe?
Yeah.
They're going to watch your back.
Yeah.
So I get it. Cool guys want to hang out with cool guys and stuff like that. But sometimes it's just people like, hey, you got my back, I got your back. We're good. And filtering business and helping each other out, watching each other grow. Rising tide lifts all ships. We just, it's got to take a few companies. I'll throw it out there. We're open for conversation to work with anybody. Like, it's going to have to take a set of balls to go out there and stand up against maybe some of the bigger companies that are comfortable where they are because they have a board of directors, and they're so disconnected from the consumer that, they don't even care anymore.
Yeah, I wonder if some of this is just also letting down the, I don't have to do all of this myself. Like if we do get together, here's a company over here that does a really good, well, here's a good example. So we have Cobalt, who's making, rifles. You got to get your barrels from somebody. And it makes sense that there would be a relationship with Roscoe, right? Which you guys have done. But again, that might not be a good example because of your relationship there and kind of how that started. But like those types of relationships, like where like we do these triggers and this is why. And it's not just because we like them. It's because we like the people there. We like where they're going. And when they make decisions about who else they do business with or whatever, they actually think about us too and how that might impact our relationship. That is a very different way of thinking than this goes back to what you were saying before. It's very incestuous. It's like, it's, baby out with the bathwater, we're moving on to the next thing. And it's destroyed relationships. And it means people have to continually start over. So when you look at the bigger picture, when you have this, when you're insulated, you don't ever have to worry about that. And you're never worried about the little guy.
No.
Ever.
Are you kidding me?
Like these guys can't get their shit together. They're always going to be doing this. We have the money. We have the power.
And most of those people at the top in those companies have never had to grind it out. I've seen it on both sides.
This is my point about your experience and your insight to this. So yeah, I mean, talk about that.
They've never had to grind it out. Most of these guys, if they're recruited from college, whatever, and it's not that there aren't sales directors out there and executives that haven't busted their ass, but there's some that have been insulated from the pores, let's call it. They don't know the trials and tribulations of a small business owner trying to make it. It's kind of like old money versus new money, right? It's the same type of mentality. So when they hear the pores complaining about things, yeah, well, of course you don't have to worry about dealers running short on funds to buy stuff because you're big enough that not only were you a year late on your COVID order, you shoved it up their fucking ass. And if they denied it, you cut them off as a dealer. So that trickles down to everybody else in the industry, right? So yes, capitalism, I'm down with it. But there is such a thing as taking advantage of the situation and using your name and your, let's say hierarchy to bully dealers and just talk to anybody. I don't have to mention names. They'll tell you the companies that are infamous for doing that, and that hurts dealers. You actually have to prop up your dealers to do better. They're your foot soldiers. You're going to go out there and sell these guns? Fuck no. Make them profitable. If you want to think about in the military mindset, these are your guys out there, your command. How are you setting them up for success? And it's more than just sending them stupid T-shirts and koozies. It's creating programs that factor in their sales throughput. If they don't have the demographic to support your product, hey, why don't we build it together?
This is how business works. Yeah, this is how business.
What a concept.
Yeah, right.
But that goes back to what I'm saying. This industry is years behind the frickin' curve. There's too many people from different industries here. And sometimes the ones that have been career within this industry, they've never seen how business is done outside. Our marketing approach is flawed because we're cut off to traditional marketing tools. The simplest tools, which is meta business, we can't do. So one of the companies that I helped start years ago was Breakthrough Clean. They're gun cleaner, stuff like that. And back then, because it was a benign enough product, I could advertise on meta business. And $20 used to go a long way. Yep. I can't even do that.
And you knew where every dollar went.
Right.
And you could throw $1,000 at an ad and you know exactly what you're going to get.
So I got to work twice as hard. So, I mean, going back to what you said earlier, thank you. That means a lot. But you should see how much work had to go into that to cover that gap in such a small amount of time. And the same thing goes to sales. Like, there's a lot of guys in this specific industry that started sales in here that don't know what the hell they're doing. And they'll burn a dealer just to make their numbers jive at the end of the quarter so they can get their bonus on top of everything else.
So let's go back to a couple of things. I want to try to tie a couple of things together here. So we're talking about NSSF, right? And what is it doing? And so in the past, it's been the place to come to showcase the products. And it happens once a year. Basically, we're at it. We're sitting at that event. And over the years, it's gotten more expensive and more expensive and more expensive to get materials, manufacture products, market products, all the things, right? And then to ultimately come here to sort of launch a product one time, right? To show it to somebody one time. And the bigger guys, no problem. But now they're actually pulling out of this. They're, because of whatever, it's reached this threshold where we don't even need to really go there anymore because everybody knows who we are and we kind of own the whole thing. And you just mentioned a couple things, so we can come back to that. The smaller companies are recognizing, like, I want to be at the show, but I'm not going to spend the money, number one, because I don't have it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You already sort of outlined that. It doesn't make, I'm not far enough into my business to understand, the margin here, or the profit and loss on this. Like, I can't afford to experiment and, let's say, fuck around and find out.
That's payroll right there.
Yeah, exactly. That means the difference between my lights being on, at home and at the shop or not.
It's that real.
And so they're figuring, and then going back to the marketing piece, and they're figuring out, like, they don't need an organization to do that for them one time a year, but they do like the idea of coming together with their friends. And that's what this seems to be turning into more of for the smaller companies. And those people, again, as they're finding out how to market their stuff, how to put their themselves out there, how to build these relationships without the need for these other things. And going back to, like, the meta business piece, the social media piece is huge on that account because I can reach right out. I can kind of see what somebody's doing. I can have those conversations versus before you had to come here to have those conversations. You had to know somebody that knew somebody that made those introductions. That's still happening. I mean, that's business. That's always going to happen. But what you're seeing is, like, the smaller companies are starting to come up. They're going, but I'm not doing a booth and I don't need a booth. I'm here to take advantage of the environment, but I don't need that environment to do this. I can just do a lot of concentrated work in a short period of time. So I can go back to fucking things that are important for running my business, which are, I need to acquire materials. I need to build product.
International clients.
I need
stuff
to,
like that.
I need to be looking for new markets to get into. I have to be on the road, and you're losing money being here on the road here to an already captive audience,
and the whole crew you got to bring with you to man the booth.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense. So then we move into like these bigger companies and this whole idea of kind of the way the cycles have flow in this business. I look at it sort of like, this might be a bad analogy. You can probably clear it up for me, but it's almost like the auto business, where every year there's a race to release a new product because everybody else is releasing a new product, and you're trying to figure out what's the other guy doing, and you got to one-up them and whatever else. And in the midst of that, it always seems that most people are really behind. Like they're talking about a product that they can't put together yet, right? Or they're talking about a product that hasn't really even been tested yet. Because it's just gotten...
Just like what you see at SEMA, talking about the automotive side.
Yeah, it's gotten too far out in front now. It's like, guys, let's slow down and do the one thing really well first, and let's get that product together, and let's make sure we know it, we trust it, so as a consumer, we can feel good about selling it, and then we can add on. But it's like this weird thing about like, hey, we're promising these products, but you got to wait a year to get it. Can you speak to this and like what impacts that and how it's gotten to where it is, specific in firearms?
Specifically in new products within the firearms side, and I think one of the bigger problems is up top with some of the bigger companies, because some of these institutions are so big, people don't talk, and they don't fund the activities that get you the actual raw data that you need, which is, what's it called? Oh, the voice of the consumer. The reason we've done well, and there's companies that have done it way better than us. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're the best. But being a silent witness, I've seen who's done it good and who hasn't. We're shooters. We hold ourselves accountable. We don't have influencers around us. We have pro staffers that tell us if our baby is ugly, right? And just like a sculpture, we start taking down the clay and turning it into something that we want to see. And sometimes it matches what customers want to fucking buy.
Interesting.
And market share opportunities that have been left open by a board of dudes that are just floundering, trying to come up with something or just dusting off an old idea so they don't get fired because they don't go shoot.
Right.
They only go to industry mandated events where they may do sporting clays and blah, blah, blah.
And to maintain some government contracts.
Right. They're not shooters. And that's one of the problems that I guess I'm trying to say here. A lot of the industry is being ran by people that aren't as passionate about the 2A as we are. And a lot of the shakeup that we've seen in the NRA, maybe we need to see it in the NSSF in the sense of bringing in fresh blood.
I love it.
Aggressive, fresh blood keeps them honest. But sometimes if you have a board of directors that are just comfortable, you don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
because you've paid your dues.
Right. And we've always done it this way, so we'll just keep doing it this way. And that makes me, I don't want to be uncomfortable. Going back to
because they don't understand it. There's some of these bigger companies that have SKU changes called special makeups, right? Where they'll sell a pallet of however many to Lipsies, and it's the same freaking pistol that was a piece of horse shit 2 years ago. Oh, but it's FDE now, so Delta runs it. Yeah, it's a hammer-fired ankle gun. No one fucking asked for that. I've heard people ask for brain tumors before they ask for that, and that's the problem. A lot of these folks love living in a vacuum, in their ivory tower, I guess, but they pay for it in the end when a small company comes up out of nowhere hungry as shit and takes their fucking lunch. And that's what I love seeing, because that's what keeps the industry fresh and doesn't keep it stagnant like what we were talking about.
So outside of Cobalt, Cobalt notwithstanding, what companies do you like that are doing that right now?
I've always looked at, honestly, views can differ, but when I was coming up and I was looking to get into the industry and stuff like that, John Noveski, in my eyes, was the father.
He comes up a lot.
Of what we get to fuck around with and take for granted today. And if he doesn't get his roses, there's a fucking problem with that. Doesn't matter if you liked him, hung out with him, worked for his competitor, give the man his fucking roses. Because he was the one there busting his ass before the assault weapons ban fell. Calming down and figuring out how to run a fucking SBR. The industry, especially the big-ass companies that didn't give a shit about an AR 2 weeks ago, really enjoyed that one along with the pistol brace because they sold millions
of them.
Of those.
On the backs of other people, yeah.
But how, exactly. And that's the fucking problem. Right? Sons of Liberty, great fucking dudes. I catch Mike and these guys in the hallway all the time. I look at them as industry peers, you know. I like the folks at LMT. I feel like their military contracts have really pulled them away, you know, from what their next big hit needs to be.
I could see that. It could be very easy to do, man. Those are tough orders to fill.
KAC.
It's a different business model.
It is, but why are you still selling commercially then?
Okay, that's what I'm saying. It's like, what are you doing? And I think that's the point you're making.
So what they're doing is they're just regurgitating whatever didn't sell on a contract, right? Or I could be wrong, but it just doesn't look that way. And then on top of everything else, they're starting to get dangerously into the territory like Knights Armament, that Knights will tell you they don't want civilian business. There's some elements within the company that bust their ass to make sure that dealers stay fed. Mm-hmm. You know, I know Ash Hess and Jack Luba,
but they're not looking to grow.
They're those advocates for the consumer side, but I'm pretty sure they're facing their own hurdles internally to even make that happen.
Yeah, they're just trying to keep the people that are already out there fed. They're not trying to grow that.
Yeah, and it's sad that these advocates are within these huge companies and they're fighting their own battles just to cater to the consumer, which is for the betterment of the company, right? Even if it's viewed as pennies,
right,
for them, it's that disconnection. I mean, there's a ton of companies out there. I don't think there's a horrible company. I think there's companies that really need to take a long, hard look at what they've been selling, and instead of trying to knock the bottom out of the market, which I'm going to get to that one pretty soon, and how big companies really do screw over the little guy. They should be looking at how to elevate the standards and not buy Mexican-made buffer tubes and Chinese parts. Did you know that most of the ARs that you're seeing at the $400 price point have that shit in them?
Let's talk about this. Yeah, we're touting made in the USA, American made.
What kind of American are you? Is the question, right? What kind of American are you?
So I also understand manufacturing. There's a cost of doing business. There's cost of acquisition of materials and all those things. But when you're standing on that platform, I think you're obligated to do some certain things. That is my personal opinion. I have no, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not illusioned or disillusioned about what companies have to do in order to
it's not free
to deliver. Correct.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you do have to keep your lights on and you have to put food on your table and all that stuff. I just think now, particularly more than ever, like the transparency of that needs to maybe be elevated, because I think people are a little bit more aware and they really want to know. And let's be honest, look at where we are right now in the world with regard to the economy. Where does the U.S. stand in terms of being able to just produce or manufacture and distribute our own shit, which is, it's scary.
Yeah.
When we look
and they've
but
held
it's not
back
impossible. We've just given the business away.
Right. And the true cost of raw materials, that price has been kind of held back. I mean, once they adjust, it's going to hurt a lot of people.
It's going to get harder.
But here's one thing I do like to point out. We're probably one of the smallest companies out there, and we're bringing some pretty cool ideas, and they're not cheap guns either.
Right.
You figure a huge publicly traded company could do the same. They just rather race to the bottom.
Yep.
And keep the American armed consumer with their expectation, their product knowledge, and their hopes in the gutter. Because they can get more repeat business that way because they're price point sensitive products. How many times are you going to buy $2,000 ARs? Maybe once or twice. But hey, now you're really set up for the fight. If we're being honest and we're trying to make sure that we provide a blanket of security for folks that want to protect their families themselves or go on the job and carry these guns for a living, do I want repeat business for 3 ARs? There's a problem there. Or do I want maybe 1 or 2 because he liked this one so much? But I know no matter what, that 1 AR that he bought from me,
they're good.
Is good to go.
They're good.
You know? And going back to what I was saying, that these bigger companies...
The undercutting, let's talk about this.
So the Bushmaster and DPMS inventory has been rotated so many times across the industry. Every time that company gets sold, it's like, you know, the Village Bicycle. Everybody's had a turn. So again, I've been a witness, right? There's a lot of feast or famine, ebbs and flows in the industry.
That's kind of what I was trying to kind of get at earlier with the. We're talking about shit. Should we be talking? Look, come on, let's just do something good, and be consistent with it rather than always trying to do something different and
or forecast better. I've been surprised.
Yeah, why can't we do that?
Because the sales side is still fucked, the mentality. And we were talking about that earlier, how progressive we are for some things and how just mediocre we are at just the basic, like there's dudes in tech industry and all these other ones that are looking at us like, look at these idiots. I'm surprised they can fucking eat. You know?
That's a really good point. Actually, that's a really good point.
And so what happens? You've been an executive at a company 20 years, and you can't tell me that you can't predict the next election cycle. I could do that shit with my eyes closed.
Right.
I didn't graduate college.
Right. Same.
If I can do it, there's a fucking problem.
Right.
And so you see these companies with, sales anomaly years, right? Windfall. Should I save it for winter? Should I pay it out in bonuses for my employees that busted their fucking asses filling those orders when everybody was in need? Should I, kind of take some precautions that way when the bottom falls out of the market, I don't have to drop my prices. Right. Keep price integrity at the forefront of your
thoughts. So you're not
thoughts.
soaring to the bottom as fast as you can.
What do? Release the hounds. Yeah. It's like a piñata. They just pull it, and then you see it online, and people are like, "Oh man, look at this $400 AR." I'm like, bro,
it's the quickest way to never recover.
Exactly,
because you can't ever go back.
And can you justify the change and difference between a $2,400, $3,000 AR and a $400 one? No, because then it's a deeper conversation. You're having to undo all the bad information that's been fed like poison to the consumers for a year that, it's just good enough, the Bubba rifle, that to tell them why, certain materials are better. So manufacturing, QC and everything is such a big difference that why bother?
So I think that's what we're getting to now, because when you do that, when you do compromise, ultimately you're not bringing in the same money you were. You're going to have to start compromising on materials or looking for other things in order to make the nut. And so that's what I think that brings us back to the being undercut and making it tougher for the little guy. It's not literally stealing, right from the customers from them.
No, and it's still a fair market, but
it's stealing their ability to be able to provide for their customer in the way that they had originally what their original intention was at the level that they promised themselves and their customer they would continue to do it. You're starting to put it out of reach to some extent, if particularly your sales process fucking sucks and you can't forecast things and you don't have good relationships. But let's talk about it.
I've been blown away at some of the sales directors that I've met. And I originally thought of as like, man, these guys are fucking rock stars. What can I learn from them? Because truth be told, my strength has always been in marketing, product development. Yep. Sales is something that I've had to learn. And to me, it's interesting because I like learning new shit, right? But is like eat while you're on the move, in the current situation that I'm at. And I've just been blown away that they're just lucky that they had a really good supportive sales staff. Just simple things like follow-ups. It's unheard of. Calling the leads, putting programs together that are set up for success. And the part that I find to be a little unethical is the gatekeeping behind the scenes.
Let's talk about it.
So a lot of the bigger manufacturers, and some when they finally make it big, they're so vertically integrated into distribution and buy groups and stuff like that, they could push out a shit product tomorrow and spend a ton of money in marketing and just, you ever seen when influencers start getting the same pistol?
All the time, man.
And it's like, oh man, well that was a fucking nothing burger.
Even the ones that blow up.
Right. They just saturate, they get it out there, and it's almost like cutting off the supply lines to anybody else that's trying to get out there. And then if you don't have the means, and hey, that's the way the business works, right? I guess. Yep. Some people will say. But I've seen people gatekeep competitors out of buy groups, out of certain distribution circles, make it hard for them to attend certain... Let's be honest. The SHOT Show, for those that don't know...
It's unobtainable for...
The uninitiated, this show actually doesn't really matter to a lot of big companies. Because by the time they get here, their book of business is already filled.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying from the get-go. They're not even coming anymore. They don't need to be here.
Well, so you have to understand the actual sales cycle for the industry, which I hope a lot of new business owners can...
wrap their head around there.
Yeah, because then you're going to be playing on their level now and flip the script. It starts at the beginning of the hunting season and also fiscal year, right? So then you have NESGW. to get in front of big audiences, right? The National Association of Sporting Goods Wholesalers. That's the fucking Catalina wine mixer. You got buy group shows like Sports Inc., NBS. The thing with these, seeing how it's a buyer's club, it's a top dealers in the country, right?
But can you even get a seat at the table?
That's the problem. And some of them, you sign up, and I get it. It's integrity for the dealers, so they're not getting sold cheap shit. But wait a minute, a lot of the companies that sell cheap shit are the top sponsors for some of these buy groups.
They're getting cheap shit.
I'm confused. It's gatekeeping. And one of these buy groups, you have to apply. I shit you fucking not. You have to apply to be considered if they even respond to your email. And then, I swear to God, Scott, check me on this. You go to the show, while the big show's going on, everybody's making money inside, you have to set money and time aside to go audition in a room for 2 hours, and then they vote like the Masons in a secret box.
Like a timeshare thing, right? Yeah.
And then that will dictate the financial growth and security.
That's wild.
Of your entire company.
That's wild.
Now I get it. Yeah, well, we protect our dealers and we do central billing. So some of these people do have insurance built in, where if the dealer defaults, you get paid by these guys regardless. And that's cool and all, but I've heard some bullshit answers sometimes.
Anytime anybody ever says like we're doing this for your own good.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. We're from the government. We're here to help.
Yeah, I'm not buying
But no, it's just, I think eventually a lot of these different institutions, they're going to notice that, necessity is the mother of all innovations. So this is what I see happening. And I would encourage people to do it. Regional shows. Mm-hmm. Why can't 2 or 3 rifle companies work together to lift each other up? That's my question.
Yeah, there's plenty of pie.
Bingo. Especially if you flip the script and you start taking the fight directly to the customer, the one group that these bigger corporations are appalled to even look at.
Yeah, they refuse to even address.
Grassroots. You're asking about the slow burn. That's my plan for this brand. Slow burn, getting in front of people, doing range days, working with folks. There's been LE guys, because we have a really good LE program. There's been a small hiccup with their rifle. There's one guy right now, City of Miami, running my personal Cobalt. And it was something stupid, probably done on his end. Who cares? We have a lifetime warranty. Like, if I'm going to be busting my ass and living on the road and time away from my kids, one of which doesn't have a lot of time left, it's got to stand for something, right? Instead of just me going out there and fucking around and hoping to get with a bigger company and just using this as a waypoint, right? And that goes back to Aaron. And I believed in him, and I saw it as an opportunity to be something better and do something better. We're selling ARs. We're not selling, high chairs or cribs, but to be the change we want to see, to be the businessmen with integrity that we don't see, to be the folks that actually give a shit. And when something happens in the market, instead of it being a joke or a punchline, we actually look at it and be like, okay, how can we pivot? What can we do?
Well, this goes, the piece you just said right there about the smaller companies coming together, 2-3 rifle companies coming together. I get kind of where it went because it was going so fast there for a while. You didn't have to, right? You could, we're going gangbusters. I think a lot of small companies, they cashed in on the fact that, let's look at how many gun sales we've had in the past 3 years versus the 3 years prior to that, right? There wasn't a real need to look at it, but now we're facing some things, right? We're facing a downturn in an economy. We're facing a time in America where we should be very, very concerned about what's going on internally from many, many levels. So there's a real true need there from folks, and they're exploring that and exercising their rights more than they have in the history. At least to our knowledge.
That's a bipartisan point of view, because look at the numbers, just published numbers, right? Background checks in 2020. The huge surge of gun owners, right? And a lot of those are Democrats. So that's something that's on both sides of the party aisle, whether you talk about it in your little social circles or not, like everybody sees what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying. I try not to go one side over the other, or point fingers.
Oh,
or anything on.
But facts are facts. At that point.
Is my point. Yeah. And so when I talk about it, let's just talk about facts. I know what I said is true. There's nothing. Look it up, right? You can look on either side. one is scared of this. Both are scared of this, right? But one side is very scared, and one of these sides is scared for different reasons.
One is preparing, the other one's reacting.
Yeah, and whatever, and all the things that happen in between on either end of that spectrum. The point being, I think, the point is there's strength in numbers, and you could force multiply in a lot of ways. Not that you have to combine brands, and I think that's what people are thinking about.
No.
It's just combine minds. Like, get together, support one another, look out.
Create small shows that you limit the head count of to not lose that touch with the consumer. You limit the amount of companies to maybe 100 companies, and you do it regionally in different places. That's what it used to be. This is what happened after what I call the blip of 2020 and the 2021 cancel SHOT Show. Life went on.
And people figured it out.
And companies, especially the smaller ones, they're like, I was right the whole time.
They figured it out.
I can just hustle my ass off, pocket this cash that I don't need to spend. And it's not like, even though NSSF has seen that the numbers are dwindling, I don't really see any programs or an olive branch being extended to talk to this demographic or create separate, smaller shows. Like, there's no real serious attempt.
The question we should be asking, and I think that's sort of maybe what you alluded to a little while ago, is why? Why aren't they asking that question? That's the question we should be asking. It's like, why aren't they making this easier for the smaller business? Why aren't they seeing this trend? Or if they are seeing the trend, why aren't they making the change? Both are very good questions. And in terms of making these smaller regional shows, is there an opportunity for them to maybe be involved in that in somehow, but at the same time already knowing? I'll answer my own question.
Look at who the board members are.
I don't think they know how. They don't know how. They're not sophisticated enough. They are not experienced enough. They don't even understand what it would be like to show up to a range day where there might be 200 people, and how to make that successful. How to even count it as successful. What would their metrics even be? Because if all you know is how to spend $1 billion, and you have to make $1.1 billion to make it work on paper and to justify it, well, then you already don't understand. What those things are.
Well, here's a funnier one, and maybe not now, but it's been a historical fact that a lot of the board members of the NSSF were CEOs of some of the biggest gun companies out there.
Look, this is
one of them was the CEO of Remington for a while.
This is the thing that people just need to understand in general. This goes back to the gatekeeping and the washing each other's hands, the whole time. This gets lost, I think, on the younger entrepreneur, on the person that's coming in that has been bounced around a bunch, hasn't been there long enough to kind of see what's going on. There are people pulling those strings, and you don't have to be the puppet. I mean, you can look. You're going to be impacted by it. Let's not be ignorant. You will be impacted by this. Learn how to insulate yourself.
Become light and lethal.
Yeah,
and that's what I tell a lot of young companies: be fucking light and lethal.
More is not better all the time, right? More is not better.
You don't targeted with your audience, with your events, with what you're doing. Be light and lethal. Be so hard to hit. Think asymmetrically, And the thing about it is, the reality. A lot of the folks that are putting these companies together, some of those folks are within our age bracket that they were figuring life out after the economical collapse. So they've got the hustle in their fucking heart. And a lot of the other folks have been sitting fat and happy at the top. Right?
Yeah. So when I look at that and that hustle that's been going on, people are all trying to do it themselves and figuring out a way like this is our brand. And along the way, going back to materials and who's actually making stuff and who those people are. I mean, this is an interesting thing that I've sort of found out about on the back end, like companies that white label products for a lot of other companies. And let's just say one day that guy or that company gets a new CEO who decides we're not doing that anymore.
Or they start allocating products and they screw over smaller companies, which happens all the time.
That's the point I'm making. What happens to your brand? What happens to your product when you've done that? What kind of relationship do you really? Okay, you get that product for cheaper, whatever it is, and it says your name on it, and that makes your product special. The reality of it is you don't really own that product at that point. Somebody else does, or they could turn it off real fast on you.
I've seen. I got to be careful here. I've seen a manufacturer who also has an OEM back end, throttle
companies,
their competitors, because they were selling them parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so while, your order's going to take this long, they hurry up and they flood the market.
It's a real thing.
I think it.
Yeah.
And then the problem with supply, because there are a lot of companies that drink from the same water trough. You'd be surprised who makes what for whom.
This is my point.
Yeah. But what ends up happening with the medium to smaller companies or the ones that aren't part of the they have to now start finding backup suppliers. So now you have quality control and product integrity issues. Barrels, perfect example. And that's something that at Roscoe I was always very on top of for the commercial OEMs, because on the big OEM side of the house, Roscoe does everything for Colt.
Okay.
People used to fight me all the time, like, okay, then who's that guy from the Picatinny Arsenal there? You know? Roscoe doesn't make their BCGs. Bullshit. They were, and then on the commercial side, working with brands like American Defense and Battle Arms and all these other ones, they came to us because they had those issues with other barrel manufacturers that were feeding other people, and the solemn promise was, hey, look, if we can create a blanket PO system and we just kind of have a forecast of what your needs are going to be,
there it is,
then we can accommodate. And Mike D'Angelo, the owner of Roscoe, is extremely sympathetic to that. And whoever he works with, like, he puts his ass into everything he does.
Yeah, but you have to be part of this process, right? As a business owner, you have to be out in front of it so that they can work with you. If you don't give them anything to work with, then again, this just goes back to you're riding a very thin line. In a time and a place right now, kind of looking at the economy and the things that you've been saying, about like what's happening on the back end, this changing of the guard. I mentioned it before, there will be building of relationships and there will be exiting relationships. Whenever those things happen, people get squeezed. And when people get squeezed, you'll be surprised at the shit that comes out and how that shit bleeds over into other shit. And you unknowingly, if you have not been keeping a couple irons and some different fires out there on the road, talking to your consumer, understanding who your quote unquote business partners are, not this is different brands, different rifle companies or whatever, so that you can call up the people that you can trust or to help you get out of a situation or at least take the pressure off in a specific situation. You're going to wind up with integrity issues. We're going to wind up with quality control issues. We're going to wind up with the ability for the larger company to keep doing whatever they want, however they want. And, if that's what you want that as a consumer, great. You do you, dude. Like
some companies love that. Some surprising, if I told you names, some companies are owned by hedge funds and they just need a loss leader. So they don't care. But at the same time, it's ruining everybody else's party.
Yeah, that's it.
There's so many hands in this industry, you'd be blown away.
That's what look at it. Look at when there's this much money anywhere.
And a lot of the ones that make their money, actual money, outside of this industry are also the same ones that are trying to tear us down and our rights, but they still want a piece of the pie.
This goes back to the LaPierre changeover and the things that are going on there. Like, again, there's this larger thing while everybody's on the hustle trying to get stuff done. Man, I mean, some people listening to this right now they're going to have a headache because they're like,
oh yeah, well, the first thing you're going to hear is bullshit.
Right.
Okay. Check it.
Right.
Start asking people. And you see a lot of, which is beautiful because in marketing, that's what you want. Brand riders, people that are going to just defend you sight unseen.
Yep.
Fanboys, if you will. The thing about fanboys, sometimes their loyalties lie with companies that couldn't give 3 fucks about them and have cut off the consumer market completely, focus on military. Like, God, I want to be like them. Right. Oh, God, please say hi to me. But yet then here are companies like us, like Suns, like other companies that are actually pressing the flesh.
Right.
Sponsoring matches, going out there, and then you have to fight sometimes for just, can I have 10 seconds of your time? That's the type of business that I love promoting because they're putting their money where their mouth is.
So right? I think that goes back to the question of what kind of American are you from a manufacturer perspective? What kind of American are you from a consumer perspective? And there's not one answer to that, right? I think there's a lot of nuance and all of that. But the things that I've learned in the companies that I like to do business with, and we all like, I'm wearing Vans right now, like it's a slippery slope.
I'm wearing Travis Scott's.
Yeah, it's
and Wu-Tang socks.
It's a slippery slope, right, to go down there. But if you're going to ride that train, or you're going to ride on that line, I think there's some things you could be thinking about. And the excitement that I had in having this conversation was to talk about that stuff, because it's tough to get into this with just, the person that does this as a hobby, right? Or somebody that's, I talk to a lot of people that are on the instruction side of things, and
which is almost its own industry.
To their respect, very much it is.
Yeah, to their respect, it's
the tools are the same, but the industry is very different.
Yeah. We help each other, right? The instructor side and the firearm side. There are ways we can work together better instead of just using people as talking heads, which is also a detriment to the instructor, because you're just being used as a show pony. And then when they don't need you anymore because the optics aren't good, they just dump you, and there goes half your business, because then people start wondering, well, why did this company get rid of this guy?
Because there was no congruency in what they were doing together to get there. Like, there was no talk about what are we trying to do here. It was more, you take the gun, you put it out there, you sell it for me.
Because they never had a plan.
There was no plan. There was no process. There was
they see them as influencers.
And then all of a sudden one day, like, we just don't feel like you're doing that good a job for us. Well, what was I supposed to do? There was no scope of work in the first place. You just sent me a fucking free gun.
There were no deliverables.
No.
You didn't factor this person in to quantify the marketing spend, right? On what you were actually going to accomplish with this person.
Right.
And you're setting them up for failure. And here's, if I can take a second, this is one that's a bug up my ass and has been for years, right? Predatory marketing goes two ways. Small businesses and folks that start a business that aren't from this industry, eventually they get some sort of third-party marketing company. And then a friend of mine passed away some years ago. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. We used to argue a lot, but I did steal this from him. John Bartolo, rest in peace. He used to say, he used to say, these companies are wasting their wishing well money. And it fucking slapped so hard that from that day, I'm like, I stole it. And it's true, because two things. One, you put the hope of your family and everybody else working for your company on the shoulders of these people without checking their body of work or where they come from, right? And think that something's going to happen. Oh, but they just juiced me dry and I got some award from this award. What the what now? The what awards? What the fuck is this? Like, where's the brand growth in this sector? I've opened up 3 sales channels this year. I haven't gotten any support. Marketing is supposed to support sales,
weird.
Not Instagram and influencers and social circle jerks, right? I'll see you at the circle bar later, by the way. But at the same time, right, these companies are putting all the hopes on these people, which sometimes is not fair either.
Agreed.
Right? No one is going to tell your story better than you.
No.
You at least have to have some sort of triage vision, 30, 60, 90, at the very least. Then you get fancy 6 months ahead, a year ahead. The more you learn,
we got to get through the first part first.
You got to have forecasts. You got to have sales data, existing sales data, to create a forecast.
Is what we're doing, supporting that.
You're driving with your headlights looking 20 feet in front of you until you can finally get to that point, right? But at the same time, you have to be involved, man.
Yeah.
You have to be involved. And then hopefully, if the mindset can change and people think, well, having an internal marketing department is so expensive, just get a marketing coordinator.
Right.
Someone that can take care of some of these things for you part-time and maybe even do pick, pack, ship and customer service.
Takes the pressure off, yeah.
But they're the ones keeping an active list of who they're sending products to, what the deliverables are, staying on top of these people. I've sent guns out to some of the biggest names out there. Still haven't seen shit.
Right.
I saw a live the other day from one of them. It was sitting in his gun safe collecting dust. I'm going to ask him this year, hey, what was so bad about my gun that you wanted to protect us and not post it on social?
That's a great
question. You never shot it. Oh, fuck me. But it's just the reality of it. That's another part of it that's just so fucking whacked is the marketing side. And it just blows my mind because the predatory marketers have banded together better than the rest of the industry. And you see it.
Yep.
It's
pretty clear.
There's some gun bunnies, and it could be male or female, that should have just been flushed down the toilet years ago.
But we're still talking about them. We're still talking about them.
We're still giving them marketing dollars.
Apparently it works.
And we're not holding them to a higher standard, because I would love to keep those people around because they're part of the 2A, and I love that. We're all shooters. Apes are stronger together. Right. Make them change. Just like we've had to, the business owners, the people working the companies from the inside, have had to roll with the punches and change with the market. Make them change too, because they're not representing my client.
Right.
That's not my demographic.
Yeah, I think that's a question that gets asked a lot, but just not out loud. Like, is this person, who is this person representing and why? What's the intention here?
Their bank account.
Yeah, there you have it. I talked to a lot of people a lot of times, on screen, but mostly off about that thing and how frustrated they get. And so I think collectively, people are very frustrated by this, but they haven't figured out how to work around it. And it goes back to the basic things you just talked about. There has to be a plan. There has to be something defined. What are we trying to do here? And they don't know how to market. They just know how to put together content. There's a lot of pieces to that. They don't know what a sales funnel even looks or feels like.
Kidding me?
Yeah. The process in and of itself is always broken. Always broken. It's like, I just need to get this guy this product. Okay, well, you got to fill out this form. I don't even have the form, man. And then, like, okay, then you have to submit it here, and you submit it to this guy. Who? And that guy gets it, and he's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, all that shit had to be figured out a long time ago to make this thing successful. And then you could go back and go, what is the cost per unit, or sorry, what is the cost per customer, right, to market this product?
That is an alien language, sir.
Yeah, no, if you
and
go
I
down
won't
there,
have you speak it on this show.
If you go down there and
you hit the nail on the head.
You go to these booths and you ask them. I'd be surprised. I'm sure I'd be surprised.
They're going to have you escorted off the grounds. But the whole issue on the predatory marketing side, and any person with a cell phone is now a marketing brand, and blah 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 blah. Yeah. Guess what? I'm going to say? That was created by the big side of the industry in 2015, because I was there. It's when the floodgates of social media opened. A lot of these executives within these bigger brands couldn't understand it, but they knew they had to be on board with it. And that was the age of red anodized ARs. Right. And
get the guy that's got 140,000 followers. That's the guy we need.
But they never checked their impressions. You know, you could buy followers, right? Yeah. It's a thing.
Yeah, that's wild.
I knew a guy, genius. He used to buy followers and engagement on his page before he would silently start approaching brands. And he would do it in a way where he wouldn't approach the brands
until he reached a certain metric.
He would target them, and it's almost like they stumbled across. It was like Inception. Like, I can't knock the hustle, right?
Right.
But had half of that energy gone into actually giving them a good product and
right,
deliverable,
at the end of the day, yeah,
this guy would have been unstoppable. But it turned into more of a malice-based counter intel type thing. And so these marketing directors are like, oh, I just discovered oil. Give this guy whatever he wants. And then it's a big nothing burger on returns. And then these marketers kept on thinking, oh, well, now my time is worth something. So they started raising their prices, and then they became the norm.
This is the model. Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
This is the
so then the middle to small businesses have to deal with yet another cancer that's been left unchecked.
Because unless you
an
have
invasive species, if you will.
Unless you have 10 grand to play in that pool, you're not playing.
And anytime I get introduced to somebody, because look, I will say, we don't work with a lot of people, but the people that we do work with, love them or hate them, they're serious fucking players.
Yep.
Like, we've been fortunate. We've been extremely fortunate that Real recognizes Real. Don, Sam, Duffy, Kawa, Rick Hogg was one of the first ones I started working with.
That was one of those relationships I was talking about that had to be unfucked.
Yep. Yeah. But he was very honest with us. And he's been a day one rider. Joe Farewell, the boys from GBRS Group, and these guys are sought after by everybody else, but they actually gave us an opportunity, and they liked what they saw. Because at the core, there's still that gunfighter, all these guys that look for a better product, and they themselves want to do good, right? And there's a tiny revolution happening to that sense. And I guess that's why I wanted to get on my soapbox and let people know that, hey, if you're thinking this, you're not alone. We just need to band together.
So that's why I wanted to have you on the show, is to talk about that tiny revolution, because I got that sense when I first came across you guys. I also got that sense when we sat down with Aaron and chatted with him at length. And Aaron's brain works it's interesting. Like, he's a very interesting combo. His brain, and I know you know this, works much differently than yours. He's a very deep thinker. Yep. He's always about not 10 steps ahead. He's about 50 steps ahead on everything. Yeah. And I think that's very tough for maybe somebody on the inside to kind of see and understand. You have to kind of just be there and understand that where he's moving this thing. And he's not going to say, he won't say things like you say them. Mm-hmm. Right. And so
he's very calculated. He wants you to come to that conclusion on your own.
That's exactly where I was going to go. And I know a couple other guys in the space like that too, or just in the firearms business that way too, where, you know, they've been told like, hey, you have to say that. You have to say that more. No, you got to put people around them like he's put you around him to say that, and then we'll be fine. Like, that's the thing is about, I guess, going back to like putting these teams together in these tiny revolutions. People are not trying to do it. If you're trying to do it all by yourself all the time and you're not keeping a finger on the pulse of what's up, you're going to get caught up in all the stuff that the predatory marketing, you're not going to be able to get materials one day. That white labeled whatever it is might not be available to you there's nothing you could have done to avoid that. What's the backup plan? How much money are you spending to how much money you're making? I mean, these are all basic fucking things. But the piece of that being like this tiny revolution is starting with people, putting people together.
People that are sick and tired of it is the reality.
Yeah. And not to badmouth the industry as a whole. I don't hear you doing that. But
no.
It's understanding.
It's a challenge.
But it's understanding how it works. And it's chestnut fucking checkers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Well, the industry's been playing Jenga for a long time.
Oh, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
While actual people that have a lot riding on the line have been playing checkers or chess. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's like that single mom that's got a limited budget, but she's got to fill the fridge.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, and
you got to move things around sometimes. Yeah, look, it might be red beans and rice only this week. You know, but that's what we're gonna do. Next week we'll eat steak.
Yeah, and shit. That was my life, and I guess that's why I see it like that. I didn't have a firm bed until I was in boot camp.
Yeah.
I grew up dirt fucking poor. Yeah. So with that taste, once you've tasted that life, you will make sure that you never fucking go back to it, and your kids will never know what it is to have an empty stomach. But along with that, though, because everything I've ever had, I've had to work for, you see the general laziness, and I think that's what pisses me off more than anything else. And coming from the background that I come from, you know, born in Miami, family from Cuba, my grandfather had to start his life over at my age now, at age 40. He used to run textile mills in Cuba, had to start washing dishes and laying down brick. One of the hardest motherfuckers ever known.
Yeah.
I have to live up to that.
Yeah, man, I get it. I totally get that. I think there's, you know, I've listened to people talk about, you know, the drive, like the whys, you know, and why they do what they do and how they do them. And it ends up coming down to stuff like that. And if people haven't had those experiences or they haven't gone through it, or they haven't stayed in it long enough to have to suffer, you know, at some point, or they don't work for somebody that's had to do that, where they could be taught this and like really have to do the fucking work. It just it's a fast paced deal, man. And anyway, in the immortal words of Ferris Bueller, it moves pretty fast. And if you don't stop to take a look around, you just might miss it and get left behind. Cobalt isn't getting left behind. I had an opportunity to sit down with you guys last night and just chat a little bit. It's always a good time. I was telling Cece walking into that conversation, I can't wait to find out what these guys are doing. Ultimately, sit down with Gabe because there are always hustlers, always stuff going on, stuff you can and talk about, and other stuff you don't. But good to see how you guys are evolving this year, how it looks different for you. And that's the thing, like nothing you were doing last year is the same as you're doing this year from like an approach perspective. Yeah. The product, fundamentally, the company...
And it keeps on evolving.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. Like if you walk down there and you just see the same products over and over again, I think that says a lot about kind of what's going on in the back end. Yeah. And a lot of what you sort of brought to the table probably is I think gives probably insight to why it probably is that way. So again, like even just how you're conducting business at the show this year, as compared to how you've done it in the past, and the team that you have, and how you've split up to do the things that you're doing, it's definitely looks more efficient to me. It's very focused. Not that it wasn't focused or efficient before. It's just we're
trying to do
really
too
twisting
many
the dials.
Different things, right? And even in small units, like everybody's got a specific
job. Yep.
Right. And they do it well.
But they know everybody else's role too.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we're looking at now. And it's not that, so this year we're not exhibiting, and it's not that we're not going to do it again. Maybe it's the partnering up with different companies.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that makes sense for everyone, right? But the reality is, and just the workload that Aaron has alone, a lot of these closed door meetings are behind closed doors for a specific reason. Mm-hmm. And I think if, knock on wood, if things go as they've started kind of coming together, there's going to definitely be a generational brand here. And hopefully when we're at the top, we're going to be the ones kicking people off their fucking
I love that.
high horse and checking people. Because, I mean, I'll never forget all the dudes that opened up doors for me.
Right.
And they're still fighting the good fight, right? If they could have an advocate somewhere up there, if we can ever even make it up that high.
It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time, but I think it is very, very possible. I mean, you guys are doing it, and I think just having that aspiration in and of itself is important, particularly in this day and age. And maybe those bigger guys aren't really looking or paying attention at this point, but I know that you're not trying to get their attention. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. With that, where do you want people to go to find out more about Cobalt? How do they find out more about you guys? Like, what's the best way to do that? How do they go shoot your guns? How do they go feel the product, see the product? Anything you want them to know about what's coming down the pipe? What can you tell us?
Sure. So, thank you for giving me that opportunity. Well, first of all, www.cobaltkinetics.com. Website's currently being renovated and, getting taken care of. New products that we're kind of unveiling at the show behind closed door meetings, and we're going to make some announcements here soon. So cool. I guess you got the exclusive, is the CK Pro Lite, CK Pro Plus, a buffer sleeve that we've created for the A5 style buffer, not just the one that we designed in tandem with Voltor, but just any A5. We may be working on some tools, some Sharpie ones, maybe. That's a passion project there. Eventually, the AR-10 XL platform, it's being requested by non-commercial parties.
Great.
So that gives us the opportunity to create the product, but then also bring it back to the commercial guys, right?
That's exciting.
Yeah, and it's to see where we've been, and obviously we launched the suppressor.
Yep.
Fourth quarter of 2023, and that one's been doing great. We've picked up a lot of really good LE agencies. At this point, I can announce that Miami-Dade SRT, Miami-Dade K9 is running not just Cobalts, but our suppressor as well. Today's 22nd. City of Miami SWAT should have received their guns already. Key West PD SRT, it's on the way. There are a bunch of Texas agencies that have picked us up, either put us on their approved list or bought outright from us.
Gotcha.
We've even picked up the Cherokee.
Okay, yeah.
The Cherokee Nation Marshal Service. Yeah, and those guys are bad dudes. A bunch of California agencies. I'm sure you're aware of some of them.
Yep, I am.
And it's been totally unplanned. People reach out to us. Hey, we've been hearing some stuff, but where there's smoke, there's fire. Let's see.
Yep.
So I would just say stay tuned to our social media. Sign up for our newsletter. There's going to be some information coming down the pipe. We're not trying to redesign the wheel. That was never the idea. It was just to make it run more efficiently. Mm-hmm. And
that's been the mantra from the beginning. I mean, that's what I've heard.
We want to earn. Yeah. We want the opportunity to earn your business, and that comes with transparency and showing you what we're doing. And that's all we are.
I love what you guys are doing. I've been a big fan from the get-go. You guys are highly respected by a lot of people that I highly respect. You guys are always open to conversation. Mm-hmm. There's always wheels turning and things going on in the background. I super appreciate that. Plus, it's a cool fucking product. I have one myself. I love it, and it's a great time. It is my go-to rifle. I think more people as they get them in their hands. And you mentioned some other really great gun companies there.
Yeah. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
That's my point.
And you have to recognize that. Yeah. Because these people have dredged the path that I can now walk on.
What I would say is my encouragement would be to all those people out there that are putting together range days. And we're seeing a few more be put on the calendar this year for 2024. That's what I've been saying this for years. one of the ones that I work closely with is California Range Weekend. Tony Molina here.
He's a good dude.
He is.
He's a good dude.
Very good friend and a good dude.
Yeah, and he's got a dark sense of humor like
hard
me.
Stop.
So when we text back and forth, it gets spicy.
A hard stop on the good dude part. And so I'm sitting down with him a little later this week to just talk a little bit more about that event and how to bring more people together like that. And one of the cool things about it was we had multiple companies out there last year. You mentioned yours. Noveski was there as well, and it was really great. People got to shoot guns. Let the consumer make the decision, right? If they're making their decision off the fancy marketing, or
what have you actually sold?
The chick, the gun bunny with the tape on her nipples, right? That's out there, or the fact that military dude X, says he ran this gun, 5 years ago when he was, operational or whatever else from this huge corporate company or whatever. If that's how they make there are consumers that are going to be out there making their decisions that way, and those aren't necessarily bad guns, but I don't think it's a good way to make a decision, right?
No,
you wouldn't order a car like that. You wouldn't buy a car like that. Maybe you would with Tesla, but you want to test drive the thing, and you guys have been out there on the road all over the place. When we started the show, we were talking about the truck full of guns, driving all day to get there and whatever else. These guys are doing that. So if you have an opportunity to put together one of these events, put them together. If you have an opportunity to go to one of these events, most of these events have some type of vendor day for guys like you, for outside spectators or participants that may not be shooting in the courses or whatever for that weekend to come out and check them out. Like that's where you go. That's where you get to shake hands with guys like Gabe's at these fucking places. Like he's at the show.
So let me make sure not to go is the flip side. Can I mention two last things? One, there's a really good event that I think people need to look at and emulate. I think S&S Precision puts on the SHOP show. Okay. And it's at their facility, and they invite certain companies out as kind of a round robin to show consumers
those guys,
what's
Virginia
out there.
Beach? S&S in Virginia Beach?
I know that they've held it in Texas before. Okay. I don't have a lot of information on that. I know my buddy Chip Lasky from Unity goes out there, and he talks very highly of it, and that's one of the dudes that's close to my heart. So anything he says is, and two, just to touch on the gun bunny thing, because I don't want it to be said, oh, woman hater, blah, blah, blah. I'm actually, because I was raised by a single mom, it pisses me off that the female demographic
isn't represented.
Is not represented. They don't want to touch us with the 10-foot pole.
Rightly
Even
so.
my wife,
Rightly so.
Of course, she's not blind. Oh, she's beautiful. That's cool. This, that, and the other. But where do I get gear? Then you pull up a guy or 20 Delta dudes or whatever, and you can go shopping just looking at what they're wearing. Like there's no, real solutions out there for women. And I think that's our fault, and shame on us.
I agree 100%. We need to do a better job with that. I've been trying to do a better job with that. I've just had the mother preppa on, Des, my buddy Des. She's out in California. I've had on High Caliber NC, as in North Carolina. She was former California. Now she's out on the East Coast. These are women that are trying to do good things and send a good message and educate people and trying to bring women into the market, to the thing in an acceptable, like inviting type of way. Those are people to follow. But I agree with you 100%. Let's get more of that. So because, and even when we're down there on the show, it's all testosterone down there, right? And it doesn't have to be like that. God bless Cece is just putting up with all the stuff that's going on down there. Everybody's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "I'm fucking fine. Like I deal with this all day long. This is fine." But
there's a show going on there.
There's a huge missing piece there.
And there's a peacocking of sorts going on at the Circle Bar. Yeah, there's 2 shows going on.
100%.
To your credit, what you're saying.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's like my buddy used to say, "It's cool, bro. You ain't got a lot to kick it."
Yeah,
we can just hang out. But
I just go to see my friends, man.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for spending time with me today, friend. Appreciate you.
Always a pleasure, man.
Take care.